Wellness Warriors. Welcome to the Burnout Resolution Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Milen Riobe. Today, we are exploring the concept of rest as a superpower. We live in a world that worships constant motion. Go, go, go. Don't stop. Chase your dreams. And don't rest until you've achieved it. But nothing in nature moves constantly or endlessly. Nature always ebbs and flows. Waves that travel through the air, our heartbeats, even our breath has a rhythm. Things expand, then they contract. Things go in, then they come out. There's activity, and then there's rest. There's always a rhythm. Burnout is seen as a rite of passage. It's the result of that go, go, go until you make it. It's the result of being out of rhythm. Burnout isn't laziness. It's not weakness. It's not failure. Today, we're going to explore exactly why rest is not laziness and is, in fact, a superpower. It's science, it's ancient wisdom, and it's the bridge back to who you really are and how you can best express it in the world. Burnout essentially happens when the ego or the brain and the heart or the soul drift apart, and they're no longer in alignment with each other. Your ego is the one that wants you to keep going and never rest. Your heart is the one, or your soul is the one that knows that rest is where you gain your strength and you gain your power to actually be successful in the world. Burnout is just your soul whispering, hey, we're off track and we need to go this way instead of. Your soul doesn't scream, whereas your ego or brain does scream, mostly out of fear. Fear of failure, fear of losing time, fear of not being enough. Your soul knows you're already enough, you're always enough, and you're already successful. And it knows how to get you there through the proper rhythm of movement and rest. When you're in burnout, your cortisol will be out of rhythm as well. Might be too high, might not be high enough. Your mitochondria don't function well. Your metabolism simply collapses. This is burnout. But it's not your body actually failing you. It's your body refusing to go in a direction that's out of alignment with itself. Rest is where we close that divide between ego and heart, or brain and heart. It's where we can consolidate our power and recover. The perfect balance between doing and being, with being actually coming first. We can't be while we're doing. We can only be while we're resting and contemplating, or what we call still. First we have to be, then we get to do and become that thing in the world. But if you're not still enough to know what that inspired action needs to be, then you'll just run around in circles like a rat on a wheel or a rat in a maze. And inevitably, burnout will get you. We're often taught, as children even, that being still too long means you're up to no good, that something is wrong, that you're not working hard enough. Maybe you're not studying hard enough at school, or you should be more active. And we internalize this. And when we grow up, we don't realize that, hey, I don't need to actually constantly be on the go. And in fact, it's not even good for me. As adults, we don't even give ourselves that permission sometimes, even when there's nobody looking over our shoulders. Rest is rebellion against a crazy society. It's saying I no longer move from fear. I will pause until I can move from my truth. Pause isn't stagnant. When you pause, it doesn't mean that you're failing to move. It's purposeful. It's getting back into alignment. It's getting back to center. It's getting back to your core frequency. It's where we get to calm the frantic action, the fear-based movement, and realize that we actually have a lot more time than we think, and that in fact being still creates more time for us, because then we move in an inspired way instead of in a frantic way. And that makes all the difference in the world. Even science agrees. Scientists once thought that space was empty, and that when we go into outer space, it's just a void, empty space, and that there was nothing there until we got to a planet, a star, or an asteroid or something. But quantum physics tells us the exact opposite. Every point in space is teeming with infinite potential and infinite energy. It's just invisible and we can't see it. That potential is waiting to potentially take form and to become something. Before something becomes a thing, it's energy first in an infinite potential. We call this the 0 point field. When you rest deeply or you're still, you enter your own personal 0 point field where you're full of infinite potential, where new possibilities arise. So when the world is frantic and you feel chaotic and out of balance, continuing to move is not usually the solution. Usually the solution is to be still, spend a few days even just in stillness. Now, of course, you have to eat and do a little bit of movement. You make sure you're getting a little bit of exercise in or taking walks so that you're not just sitting still constantly. But we have our own 0 point fields where we get to become fully aligned at our core frequencies. And we can make decisions with clarity through self-love. If we're not doing what we love, we will burn out. It's inevitable. And sometimes we don't quite know what we love because we were told what we should love. And we end up growing up and doing things. And then we wake up and we're like, why am I doing this thing? I didn't really like it. I just did it because it was expected. If we're not sitting still long enough to really examine our own motives, we're going to miss that. We call that coherence. We're in the flow. When we're in the flow, we're much more powerful and much more efficient. Things come to us easily. We move through the day very easily when we're in rhythm, in the flow, in alignment, doing things that we love. And while that may sound kind of corny, science is showing us more and more that it's very true. When we're in an emotion of joy and love, we are much more efficient and much healthier than when we are in an emotion of fear. So there's something about these emotions, these frequencies that we find ourselves in. Emotions are energy in motion. So they're frequencies, they're waves. And joy is a much higher frequency than fear, which is a much lower frequency. When we're in fear, we are out of rhythm because our true nature is to be at a very high frequency. Brain waves can be coherent with heart waves. Heart rate variability is a type of coherence, especially when you take time to take slow, deep breaths and get yourself into what we call high coherence. High coherence inspires more joy and love, whereas low coherence is associated with high stress and even diseases and low mood and anxiety as well. There are physics concepts that tell us things tend to become less ordered or more chaotic over time unless we reorganize them, unless we put energy back into the system to bring it back into rhythm. Things will have a tendency to fall apart if we're not putting energy into the system to keep them organized and together. When we rest is when we put those things back together so that we stay in our rhythm, stay in high coherence. Rest is nature's balance point to maintain rhythm. The Institute of Heart Math was very instrumental in doing studies to show that 5-second inhales and 5-second exhales through the nose causes your brain and your heart to fall into a rhythm, what we call coherence. If you were to look at it on a screen, it would look like a very smooth sine wave. That's literally alignment made visible that we can actually see with our eyes. And this is a phenomenon of our own nervous system, what we call the autonomic nervous system. The autonomic nervous system is that background nervous system that regulates our heartbeat, breathing, body temperature, opening and closing our pores, all these subconscious things that our bodies do day and night, even when we sleep. That nervous system is controlled by these breaths. When we're taking coherent breaths, these 5-second inhales, 5-second exhales, we're bringing that system to our full control. This is where our power lies. We literally take control of something that is usually subconscious, and we get to tell it how we want it to move in the world, how we want it to respond in our bodies, and create our metabolism, create our body functions more normally. This is literally something that we control with our breath. We can literally change the physiology of our bodies just by breathing. But obviously, if we're moving, we can't take a 5-second inhale and a 5-second exhale through our nose. It's impossible. We can only do this when we are still. Long before quantum physics, ancient traditions also knew this. In Taoism, it said, returning to the source is stillness. Stillness is the way of heaven. In Vedic teachings, they talk about the yoga nidra, or what they call yogic sleep. It's conscious rest that regenerates life force. Even in the Bible, Genesis, God rested on the seventh day. So even God took a break. In Buddhism, it's said that presence is rest and craving is exhaustion. What they mean by presence is being in the flow, being in coherence, being fully present with your environment, or being very mindful as you move through your day. Even when you're moving, you're resting and allowing the day to carry you through itself. So you're not fighting against the day. In the Kabbalah, from a concept that they call ayin, or nothingness, all creation flows. No matter where we look in ancient traditions, we see the same concepts. They talk about stillness, they talk about the void, they talk about rest, or the womb of renewal. And you don't actually have to be asleep to rest. This is what presence is in Buddhist teachings. It's almost as though you're resting while you're fully awake because you're with the flow. You're going with the flow of life. In neuroscience, we call this wakeful rest. Meditate, or you can breathe, even while doing something like washing dishes, taking a walk, going to work, walking a pet, doing the laundry. Even the mundane becomes a rest. When you breathe intentionally, your heart rate slows, your hormones balance, and your creativity returns to you. When we're moving in fear, we can't be creative because fear lights up our left brain. And we create from the opposite side of our brain. If one side is too dominant, then the other side doesn't get to be itself. We can't be creative and in fear at the same time. It's very difficult to do. So rest isn't necessarily the absence of wakefulness or the absence of motion. It's the presence of awareness, being fully aware of what you're doing, why you're doing it, and preferably being in joy while you're doing it. This is where gratitude comes in, where even doing the laundry can be something you're grateful for. Generally speaking, most people would hate having to do their laundry, but for me, I love doing laundry for my kids. I'll do my laundry, their laundry, and it becomes something that I'm grateful I can do. And so it lights you up. Even something as mundane as laundry or cooking, it lights you up because of who you're doing it for. And of course, you're doing it for yourself primarily. I love to eat healthy and I love to make sure that I do the things that I need, that I love doing it for other people as well. When we're in burnout, it's extremely important to start to look at things through the lens of being fully present, resting even while you're doing. Moving out of alignment throughout your day is what creates the sensation of the fatigue and the exhaustion because of the friction that induces inside the body. When we're doing something we don't want to do, for example, if you're in a career you don't like or a toxic work environment, you don't want to go there because it's not as safe as you would like it to be, we're fighting against the flow. There's part of us saying we should not be in this environment. Why are we going here every day? And then there's another part of us saying, yeah, but we don't have a choice. There's that split. And when you split yourself, when your ego is saying one thing, but your heart is saying something else, you're burning all this energy going in two different directions. We can see how that can create this tension, and your body has to move through that tension. So it's almost like you've got the angel on one shoulder and the devil on the other, and you're trying to focus on both, right? It's exhausting listening to two little voices. One's telling you go this way and the other one's telling you go that way. So we need to realign when we're in burnout. And sometimes we have to make some hard decisions about whether or not we should continue to go to this environment or If it's not a toxic work environment, but it's not something we love to do, then we have to really be still enough to start to figure out what it is that we'd like to do. I found out really quickly I did not like being up all night long delivering babies and doing emergency surgeries and being in the emergency room, especially when that came at the expense of my own kids. I remember having to take call, and my daughter would burst into tears when I had to leave the house. One part of me was like, why are you going to this place and going away from your own daughter? And the other was like, you need to do this. This is what you studied for 13 years. Eventually, my heart won and stopped practicing obstetrics and gynecology. I stopped delivering babies, then I stopped doing surgeries, I stopped taking call, I stopped going to the hospital so I could be home more and spend more time with my kids. But then I had to figure out, okay, now what? What do I do now? Something that I came to understand that I loved through that process was traditional Chinese medicine. To this day, that's the most fun thing I have ever studied and practiced so far. Never say never. There might be something else that comes along that I love even more, but for now, it's traditional Chinese medicine. I got to go and study that. But had I kept listening to the voice in my head that was like, wait, you spent how many hundreds of thousands of dollars going to medical school, and now you're not going to do the thing you studied for 13 years? If I'd listened to that part, I wouldn't have had the courage to turn around and go study traditional Chinese medicine and acupuncture instead. Sometimes there are these really tough choices that we have to make that are terrifying. But if we're not in stillness long enough, we won't come to those conclusions. We won't find those other avenues. And the more still we can be, the more centered, the more aligned we can be, the faster these things come to us. Because it wasn't like I didn't know that I would like traditional Chinese medicine, because even when I was younger, I gravitated towards Taoism and Buddhism. It wasn't something I ever thought about studying formally. It was just like a hobby to read books about it. In my environment where I grew up, it was all about medicine. We're from the Caribbean. You become a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer, and that's it. So it wasn't really something I thought about. Once you got swept up in pre-medicine, going to college, doing pre-med, and going to medical school, you really didn't have time to pursue passions. You were just reading through books, going to classes, taking exams, getting 2, 3 hours of sleep here and there, and then start over and do it again. So if it weren't for the stillness, if it weren't for me just sitting still, and my own children made me sit still, right? My daughter was really colicky when she was a baby, and so I literally had to hold her so she could go to sleep at night. So I had to be still. I had really no choice. And that was a blessing at the end of the day, right? There are times you just had to hold her and hug her, and that was the only way she would stop crying. Turned out we ended up giving her some Chinese herbs 2 years later. The very thing that I love to study so much is what helped her the most. Chinese medicine saved her from having surgery to remove her adenoids when she was just 2 years old. And so laying there and staring at the ceiling while I was just comforting her so she could fall asleep is when I would practice my breathing. It was when I would be still, and thoughts would just pop into my head, like, what else could I be doing right now? Even the thought of thinking about something else was terrifying. Never mind actually thinking about it. So I dipped my toe in the water. I read a book about Chinese medicine called The Web That Has No Weaver, and I thought it was fascinating. And so I was like, this is it. I'm going to go study this. But meanwhile, there was all the chaos around me. I had a young daughter. At the time I was married, so I had a husband, and we had a home. We were both physicians, both on call, never home. So there was all this chaos still swirling around me, but thankfully my daughter had me more centered. I was able to then find my way out of something I did not enjoy to something I did. Sometimes when you're forced to be still, that's the universe giving you a clue like, hey, sit down somewhere and figure this out for yourself. Because what you're doing is not working for you. Either it's, I don't love what I'm doing, I'm afraid to change what I'm doing, so I'm just going to keep doing it. Or I love what I do, but this particular place that I'm at is not conducive to me doing that in a way that I enjoy. The thing is, if you just quit your job, you're going to take your burnout with you wherever you go. You have to resolve that burnout first. before you move into the next space, whatever that space is going to be. I did not know that at the time. So I put in my letter of resignation. I went to study traditional Chinese medicine and acupuncture. I took an interim position somewhere till I could open up my practice again. And then it was chaotic there too. It wasn't until I realized I can't take my burnout around with me like luggage. I have to actually heal myself. And through traditional Chinese medicine, I learned how to do that. Because in what we call Western or allopathic medicine, we don't have anything that's healing. All we do is wait for ourselves to crash and burn and then take a drug. Whereas in traditional Chinese medicine, it's all about prevention. It wasn't until I studied traditional Chinese medicine that I began to understand what true prevention actually looked like. And so I applied it and I was able to get myself out of burnout. Then things smoothed out for me. Otherwise, I would have kept going with the burnout. Even though I was doing something I loved, I would have burned out because I just didn't know at the time. So don't do what I did. Make sure that you resolve your burnout first. That doesn't mean you have to stay in a toxic environment until your burnout's gone. Take a break where you can be still. Plan to reset your metabolism. Plan to get on a good eating schedule. Make sure you get plenty of sleep. Make sure you work on presence. Even while you're waiting to quit your job, either get another job or become an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs have way less burnout than employees. Many people are starting their entrepreneurial journeys. If you don't start taking care of the burnout, the metabolic causes of your burnout, and being more still and fully present in your life and your experiences, you just lug the burnout with you into a new business. Studies on burnout and entrepreneurs tell us that having a purpose because it's your own business clarifies your goals more and gives you this additional motivation. You're more in flow when it's your own thing than when you're working for someone else. Even though entrepreneurship is very challenging, business owners in general don't feel as burnt out as employees do. They have more of a sense of agency as the owner of the business than they would as an employee of the business. And again, that sense of control, like I'm in charge of my own destiny, that an entrepreneur gets to have is different than that of an employee. It makes sense that the studies show us this. You don't want to take that leap without really centering yourself metabolically, spiritually, mind, body, soul, readying for battle, so to speak. But the battle isn't really a battle. It's simply being more present with your emotions, your feelings, sensations. Being present is simply being awake. Feel the wind on your skin, for example, or you look up at the sky more, look at people that you're walking past, and you smile, you engage, being fully present. And then if something happens that's unpleasant, being present with that too, allowing that emotion to come up, identify what it is, and be with it so that it can pass through. When we try to stop our emotions or stuff our emotions, they get trapped in our body and gunk up the mechanism. That can cause burnout as well. Making sure that you're fully present with emotions is part of being fully present. And that doesn't mean you have to go talk it out with someone. It just means you talk it out with yourself when you're still. And you just allow that emotion to come up and come through. Of course, in a safe way, right? There are some emotions that are more traumatic than others. If you have severe childhood trauma history or adulthood trauma, you want to do that under the care of a therapist or psychiatrist. But making sure that if an emotion is arising, you allow it to come up and to pass through so it doesn't get trapped is extremely important when we talk about being present, being in the flow, being in coherence. What does this look like in the real world? The first thing is to rest with intention. Make sure you plan your rest. Make sure that no matter how crazy your day is, that you take at least a couple of minutes, 3 minutes, to interrupt and have some time to take some deep breaths in and out through the nose, 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out. It's a 10-second breath that instantly grounds the body and instantly gets it into coherence. Doing that for about you can do it for 5 minutes as well, helps to really get the body into that flow. And the body can have a memory of that type of breath. And that literally helps to change the physiology of the body over time as you practice it a few times throughout the day. Honor the 90-minute rule. We can only focus on something for 90 minutes at a time, and then we have to take a break. There's no point in trying to muscle your way through for hours. You're so much less efficient when you do that. After every 90 minutes, take about 5 minutes just to stop and rest and breathe. Build it into your day. Like constantly remind my clients and even myself, I do this all the time. I set alarms all the time on my phone to remind me when I need to stop and do something. At some point in your day, schedule a blackout time when there's no phone, no television, no screens, and you close your eyes for about 5 minutes. You can do that at the same time that you're doing your breath work. That's perfectly fine. But just shut it all down for 5 minutes. Another really important thing is to protect the edges of your day, the outer barriers of your day. So when you first wake up, don't just hit the ground running and fly out the door. It takes about 30 minutes to wake up. So for me, I know I've got my morning ritual. I'd take an hour if I could, but it's just slow. I'm not rushing to go to work. I try not to jump right on my phone, except to make sure none of my kids needed me for anything first thing in the morning. Then put it back down, and I'm just getting myself ready. 30 minutes before bed is also important to shut it all down, not have the screens, not be too busy, but really just slowly winding yourself down, whether it's taking a shower, brushing your teeth, doing breath work for a few minutes, just being still before you sleep. And be prepared to receive when you rest, receive clarity, alignment. All of our best ideas come while we're resting. So don't push it, don't seek out the information, but just be ready to receive things. They might be little voices in your head, little ideas that pop in while you're completely still. If you've had something on your mind, you had a question, something you were trying to figure out, sometimes it's only when you're still that suddenly the answer comes to you. Remember, rest is your 0 point field. It's that void. And void is not emptiness. While it might be empty of doing, it's infinitely full of potentiality and being. So rest is not a waste of time. It's realigning yourself, getting back to your core, getting back to who you really are. When we're fulfilling a bunch of roles, we're all over the place. We're being mom over here, doctor over there, or nurse over here, lawyer over there, bus driver, whatever we're doing throughout the day. It's not really who we are. It's a role that we play. It's only in the stillness that we get to be who we really are. That allows us to bring that into the world more fully, more efficiently, with more presence. The only way to get rid of burnout for good is not just to take care of our bodies, like knowing our dynamic metabolic types, applying that to the 4 pillars of wellness. That's extremely important. If we don't have the mindset and they're not coming together, we're going to burn out one way or the other. The body operates most efficiently when we are being 100% who we are in the world. When we're in our authentic self, we're usually pretty joyful and happy. It's only when we're thinking of what others might think of us, what authoritative figures might say, or what the consequences of doing something might be in the world. That's when we start to shrink down and we lose our presence, and we lose our alignment, and we lose our flow. So take advantage of that rest, take advantage of that stillness. You'll be amazed at what comes to you while you're being still and what amazing creative ideas you'll get. And then, of course, there's the rest where we are asleep. So making sure you get all your rest that you need is super important. For those of you who've watched in the past, you know that sleep recommendations are based on your dynamic metabolic type and your biological sex. Just to maintain the status quo, biological men need 7 hours a night. Just to maintain the status quo, biological women need 8 hours a night. If you're a deficient dynamic metabolic type, add 1 hour. For my own kids, the way I got them to really understand that rest was a really important thing is to build laziness into the day. So I called it being lazy when they were kids, not so much rest, but just bumming out every now and again. There were days we just hang out in our pajamas and we would take a shower and change our pajamas. So it was just being lazy. We didn't have to go into the world and do anything spectacular. We could sit on the couch, chill, play games, do whatever we want to do, sleep in. I called it being lazy, and we made it into something that was extremely positive. And so thankfully, neither one of my kids has this go, go, go mentality that I had when I was their age. Not to judge, I think it turned out pretty okay, but I could have avoided a lot of burnout had I been more still and thought that being still was actually a good thing. That's what I have for you today. I hope you found this podcast helpful. If you're ready to take the next step, I invite you to take our 7-day metabolic reset challenge. The link will be below, or you can visit our website, awakenedwellnessnow.com, to sign up. If you enjoyed this video, please share it with someone that you feel would be helped by it. Like and subscribe. If you want to take a deep dive, I invite you to our Wellness Warrior 9-week transformation program, where we dive deep into all facets of burnout recovery. And that information is also on our website. Thank you again for listening and watching, and until next time, many, many blessings. Thank you.